Thank you everybody for being here. My name is Justin. I'm one of the marketing guys here at BridgeCom, and then Dwayne, our AnyTone specialist technician, is here with us. So Dwayne is going to basically go over the first steps you guys should take after you purchase your AnyTone 878 Plus. Basically, once you get out of the box, what do you do next? Dwayne's going to kind of walk you guys through that. And then after Dwayne's done, we'll take some time. So if you guys have any questions, he can answer questions, show you anything else you might need. So yeah, while Dwayne is walking through his lesson today, we'll go ahead and mute everybody else. And then once Dwayne's done in the chat, just put something in there saying you got a question, and then we'll go to whoever and unmute them and let them ask their question. So yeah, without further ado, I'll turn it over to Dwayne and let him start.
Okay, great. Thank you, Justin. Appreciate that. Justin is my cohort and co-host today. So thank you again for being with me, Justin. So what I'm going to be doing today is going over kind of like the deer in the headlight look when you open up your radio and you have it in front of you and you go, hey, what do I do now? So that's kind of how I'm going to start. I've got two websites up here on my photo that we're going to be looking at today. One, of course, is the BridgeCom site. And then we're going to be also looking at the radioid.net site for some a radio ID session, and also for downloading some digital contacts. So I'll leave that up for just a minute here in case anybody, you'll be able to see me. Okay, so the first thing you do, you open up your radio and you plug it in, get it set up to your computer. Don't turn it on, just going to have the radio plugged in. Make sure that the mic connector is plugged in solid. I get a couple of times a week where somebody will say, I can't get the USB port, and it'll just be the fact that they haven't got that 2-pin connector pushed all the way into the radio. So that's just something to keep in mind. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to be looking to get the customer programming software downloaded and installed on your PC. So we're going to be going to the BridgeCom website. I have it up already, but it's www.bridgecomsystems.com. And once we're there, this is the new format of the website. So we've got some shopping. Justin will probably take you through that later to try to clam some money out of you guys. We got our giveaways, which is always happy. And then we got support and resources. So today we're going to be logging into the main window and heading to support. So I'm going to click on support and get over there. I think I am. Looks like things are slow, Justin. I wonder if it's because I'm streaming.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That's
there we go.
There we go. Cool.
That's all right. We just we're going to take this at a nice slow pace anyway. So we'll all have to just be patient a little bit. You guys can see my screen. Just nod down, make sure everybody's seeing my screen. Okay. All right, good. All right, so we're going to scroll down. We're going to be looking, today we're going to be using the 878 and the 878 Plus. So we've gone into the website, we've got to the support page, we've scrolled down, and these are our actual...
Make sure you're sharing your screen.
What's that?
Make sure you're sharing your screen.
Thought I was. All right. Here we go.
Awesome.
Everybody see that now?
Yep.
All right, so let's go back up to the beginning then, since I scrolled down. All right, we went into the BridgeCom website, and we looked at the support pull down, which takes us to our support page. There's a lot of information here, so we're going to scroll through it. Knowledge base is at the top, lots of videos, BridgeCom University. Get down to the middle of the page, and we're looking at the AnyTone and other unit support pages. So today we're using the AnyTone 878 Plus. So we're going to be downloading the firmware, CPS, and etc. from this link right here. Click on that. And I have to apologize, I guess with live streaming and the connection that I have, which is a AT&T hotspot, it's going to be a little sluggish for the downloads. So I apologize for that, but we'll still be able to take our time and get through the information. All right, so this is the CPS firmware and driver downloads for the 878. And I'm going to go ahead and use the latest firmware for this demo. So we'll click on that. And what's going to happen is the firmware is in a compressed file. It's going to download to my downloads folder. And it's starting to download here at the bottom. You can see it's starting to download. So I've got a very slow connection for some reason, and I assume it's the streaming. So let's see how this goes. All right, so since it says 2 hours left, I think we're going to just pass this, and I'm going to do this ad hoc and grab it off of my hard drive. But you guys would be downloading it. I typically download it into my downloads folder and go from there. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this. And I'm going to move over to pick up my software from a different spot because of the slowness of the connection here. So you guys don't get confused here. We're going to do it just like as if we were downloading it. So I'm going to copy, going to move over to my downloads, and I want to paste it. Okay, so this is simulating a download, which would have taken way too long. So what happens is we get the zip file, and it's a compressed file. You can't actually run the software from this file, but this is step one. You can see I cleaned my downloads folder out so that we won't have any conflicting stuff here. I'm going to right click on this. I use a program called 7-Zip to do my extractions. So I'm just going to go ahead and tell 7-Zip to make the extractions here. That's a setup program. So got a little bit of stuff going on here that is out of the norm for me. So I apologize. I wasn't expecting the download to take that long. So, all right, that's what I want. We'll copy this one. I want to give you guys the full experience. So working from the hip here. Okay, so this should be the correct download with all the files. So we'll go back into 7-Zip. So I guess this is just going over what I said already. We'll extract everything here. Okay, so when you extract, you get a number of folders, and there isn't really a lot of information on this. So I'm going to take a few minutes to just walk through these folders because inside there's a lot of good information. So I'm going to sort this. The top folder that opens up and downloads is a read first folder. So if we open that up, inside there we've got a Bluetooth user's guide. There's a change log which tells you what's been changed in the firmware, and then there's update instructions for things that you need to do to the radio going forward. Not so much for today, but there'd be update instructions for the firmware, how to do an icon update. There's a user manual. So there's quite a bit of information in the README first file. The second file or folder that I want to show you is the programming guides folder. And this has a really nice quick VFO programming. So if you wanted to program from the radio keypad using the VFO, there's a PDF that talks to you and walks you through that. The rest of these guides are all the same guide in different languages, but there's a programming guide for the 868, 878, and it also carries over to the 578. I'm going to go ahead and open this. Okay, so the reason I like this guide is it has an index. That's something that is really helpful when you're struggling to find something. You can take a look at the index. You need to know something about a zone. You need to know default channel info, extended talk group function. So this guide is a really quick guide. It's got a lot of great information in it, and a lot of people overlook it. So we'll go ahead and get rid of this. All right. Okay. So I wanted to make sure that I showed that. As new users, you're really probably not familiar with this format. So at least I got you a little bit into a couple of folders that has some good information. So we're going to go over here now. We're not actually doing a firmware update today. We're going to be doing a loading of the customer programming software. So we're going to open up that folder right there. Let's see if I can get rid of this guy for us here. And this is the actual setup program for the CPS. It'll be D878UV underscore setup with the actual revision of the setup. I'll right click on this. I'm going to run this as administrator, and this is definitely the way that you want to load your AnyTone programming software. So I'm going to get the Windows message. Are you guys seeing my machine? Justin, are you seeing my screen okay? Okay, good. All right, so this is setup is started. Okay.
Sorry, I was muted.
Assume everybody's English, so we'll say English is okay. Welcome to the setup wizard for the programming software. We'll do a next. This is a little tip right here. For some reason, AnyTone defaults this to D drive. Not everyone has a D drive, and actually, I would recommend installing it to C drive. Much cleaner install. So I just changed this for the default install folder to the C drive with the same name as before, which is the D878 UV. We'll go next here. This is telling you where you want your program shortcuts. Use the default. It works perfect. And then we can also create a desktop icon, which I'm going to go ahead and do. Next thing is the install. All right. Now you have the option when you do the install to launch the program. I'm going to actually not launch it. I'm just going to do a finish. I'm going to shut down. We no longer need these files. We've downloaded and installed the files, so we'll get rid of the files that's off of it. We really don't need this download section here either, so we'll move that out of the way. Now, what's happened here, I'm going to move this right out to the middle of the screen. We installed the D878 UV 1.21 CPS. So I'm going to actually launch it using the icon by double clicking on it. Okay, so this is the programming software format that you're going to have. Left-hand side of the screen are some menus that you can get at. I'm going to open up the digital menu. There's information there we're going to be looking at, but this is your first look at the customer programming software, and this is version 1.21. So across the top here, there's a file box. You can open and save your code plugs with this. There's model information, which will tell you in this particular code plug that's loaded in the CPS what the band is, what the model information is. And in this case, we have a commercial band. It comes both ways. It comes with the amateur and with the commercial. I'm going to skip set right now for a minute. I want to show you the program menu real quick. In here is read from the radio and write to the radio, which is once we establish a COM connection, that's how you'll write and read the code plug from the radio. There's a tool section here, which has a lot of operations that you can do, import, export. I'm going to actually go down here and use this options menu. When you first load a customer programming software for the first time with a new version, you have to tell it what's in your radio. And you do that by the program other, and it opens up what's called the annex function setting. So we're looking at the D878UV Plus as our simulated radio or actual radio. So we'll be checking the fact that it has a GPS, it has Bluetooth, and we're going to want to see the APRS menu. So these are the settings, and typically these are the settings for all the radios. There is a 500-hour record setting here. That is a special module that is actually put in the radio in place of the Bluetooth. Not very many of them around. I probably have the only one in the US. I don't think they actually sold many, but I did get a demo of this. So I do have one radio with this record in there, but you have to take the Bluetooth module out. I prefer using Bluetooth anyway. So I want to just take you over here to where this menu is under public, right by the hotkey. Keep an eye on this while I go ahead and click OK here. And you'll see a new menu came up as APRS. Okay, and that's turning on those program options, tool options, I'm sorry. Turning on APRS brings that APRS menu in there. Now that's a little bit more of an advanced subject that I'm going to get into today, but I wanted to kind of show you that you do need to do the tool options anytime you load a new version of the CPS. Once you're using this CPS as 1.21, these settings will stick. It's only when you do a new one that you have to do that. So that's pretty good. Not going to ask for questions until I get through a little bit more. So if you have questions, please write them down so we can address them. We can always go back to this menu. It's not a problem. So we've done the locate and download the files. We've extracted the files. I did a review of folders. We actually installed the CPS, and we did a little bit of housekeeping by turning on the correct annex functions. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually connect the radio to the PC. So I'm going to go up to the set menu here, and I'm going to open up Setcom. This is the communications window. This is the way I like to load my radio COM port. So my radio is plugged in. I'm going to turn it on. We're going to have a few seconds while it boots. The key here is I'm watching for the COM port of the radio to connect to the PC in this window. And there it is, COM3. So I'm going to highlight it so that this programming software knows this is the COM that we're going to be connected to. Click OK. So the next thing I want to do as a new user, you're going to want to read your radio. The code plug that's in the radio from the factory matches the frequency band that's in the radio. So by reading the radio, we established a common code plug to work with in the programming software and in the radio. So again, there's a program button up here. We can use that to open up and read the radio. There's also a couple little icons here. The one on the right underneath my arrow is right to the radio. I'll skip over one to the left, and there's read from the radio. So I'm going to go ahead now and read the radio. Now we're not going to read digital contacts. We're just going to read the actual code plug data. All right. So where we're at now is we've actually connected the radio to the COM port. Radio is rebooting after we read it. This is very common. So connecting to the COM port, reading the radio. So in the radio, these are 8 sample channels. They really have no value to you except to say this is how you would see a program channel for analog or digital. To be quite honest with you, the analog A to D and D to A, I never use those. I don't even think that it's necessary. If some specific instance, you may need to be doing something like this, but for the average user, analog and digital is the only 2 functions that you need to worry about. So these channels, being that these channels are unnecessary, I'm going to right click on line 8. I'm going to delete it. And I'm going to do this for 7. I'm going to do this for 6. And do this for 5. We're going to go all the way up. I'm going to leave channel 1. We're going to be changing it for this demo here. All right. Okay, so we left 1 channel. in order to write a code plug to the AnyTone radio, you need to have at least one channel. I'm going to move over here to the zone menu. You need to have at least one zone with a channel in it. And then I'm going to open up the digital section, and you need to have at least one talk group. Now this is a bogus talk group. These are all examples. In order to actually DMR digitally with the radio, you would have to put your own ID in here. Okay, so under radio ID, digital menu, radio ID, double clicking, I'm going to put mine in. I'll put my call sign in. All right. So remember, this is your radio ID. So the radio, you see there's many, many lines for the radio ID. So if you were sharing the radio with someone, you could actually put in more than one ID. The issue that happens when you use more than one ID is that with just one ID in there, it defaults. So if I look at channels, it'll default to my ID. If you use more than one, you have to actually tell the channel which radio ID to use. So for that purpose, I recommend for new users to stick with one single radio ID. Okay, so I'm actually going to program one channel as we go through this so that you can see at least one channel be programmed. So the first thing we need to start with is we need to put a real talk group in here. So I'm going to take my number one talk group, and I'm actually going to put in, I have my SkyBridge open. So I'm going to call it Sky Parrot. I'm actually going to spell it right and get it, and it's going to be a private call for Parrot. It's the only one of the talk groups that I know of that's a private call. And the reason for that is this is an echo channel. So they don't want 150 people hearing this. They want the call kept privately between your test and Parrot. So the Brandmeister talk group for Parrot and Echo is 9990. So not sure why this is doing this. At least one group contact. Okay, that's new to Dwayne. Dwayne just found that out. All right. So leaving the bogus talk group up there. I'll open a new one. Go with Sky Parrot. Make it a private call. Put in the ID 9990. Click OK. All right. So this is new to me. Didn't know this. Haven't had a new install like this in quite a while. I actually cleaned off my computer to do this for you guys today, so it would actually really be a new install. So we've got one talk group programmed. Now we're going to go up and we're going to look at channel. We're going to take this channel, which is mandatory to have one channel, and I'm going to actually set it up for my SkyBridge with Parrot. So I'm going to name it Sky Parrot. I like to put which Parrot I'm using here. Now I'm going to put the frequencies in for my SkyBridge. Going to make this a digital channel. Again, these A to D and D to A, I don't recommend you use those. As you click into some of these things at the bottom of the menu system here, there's a help screen. In this particular case, it doesn't help much, but we'll go with digital. And since I'm going to be talking to my hotspot, I'm going to put low power in here. Transmit permit, you can do this a few different ways. Different color code means that if there's somebody else using this frequency with a color code, a different color code than you won't be able to get in. For this demonstration, I'm going to just use always. And I'm not going to go into any really exotic stuff. We're just going to keep this simple. So I've got the Sky Parrot channel. I've got the frequencies. The last thing I have to do is I have to make sure the contact or talk group is correct. And AnyTone has a nomenclature problem here. They call this a contact here, but really over on the left side under digital, it's contact/talk groups. So it's just a way they have written this. I guess it's a little bit of Chinglish. They just should have used probably talk group all the way through. But I'm going to open this up. This is a very simple code plug. We have the bogus group call that has to be in there. And then we have our SkyParrot talk group. So I'm going to click and double click on that and set this up for SkyParrot. Now my SkyParrot has to be in color code 1, and it has to be in slot 2. These are the defaults for the SkyBridge settings. So if you have a SkyBridge, color code 1, slot 2. If you're looking at this was a repeater or going out to a repeater, it would be a little bit different. It's whatever the repeater owner has set. We'll change this to simplex since we're using this as a simplex frequency. So that sets up the first channel. So we named it. I put the frequencies in that I want to transmit and receive on. I set it up as a digital channel. I set the power level. I set it to simplex, and I set the talk group for a test channel of parrot. Now, the last thing that has to be in the radio is at least one zone. So I'm going over to the public menu in zone. We'll open it up. Zone 1, I'm going to open that up. I'm going to change the name. I'm going to change it to SkyBridge, since that's what my connection is. As you can see, it's already, we already have a zone member of SkyParrot 90 as channel. So the way this works is if I did not want this channel in this zone, I would move it over to the available. If I do want it, I would move it over to the zone member. These type of things really don't make a difference right now. I don't want to get into it. If you got your zone looking like this, you're all set to go. If you had multiple channels in here, you can do some sorting. You can sort by ID, you can sort by name, you can move the channels up and down. So zone is fairly powerful tool. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. So I'm going to kind of summarize again. I did the radio ID with my call sign. I put a parrot talk group in so that we have something to talk on. I created a parrot channel. I named it frequencies, digital, low power, simplex, and I put the channel ID in there for the talk group SkyParrot, color code 1, slot 2. So at this point, we could write this code plug to the radio and be set to go. So let's go ahead and make sure our comm is still connected. I'm going to write this to the radio. Now I have a radio that has a code plug in it with one channel, one zone. So that's what's going to come up on the display. What I'm looking at now is I'm going to try to get the dashboard up on my SkyBridge. And as always with demos, it's a wonderful tool. It's not working well. All right. All right, so let me go back and continue. This would be a point where if you have questions, Justin, can we take a few questions right now before I move on?
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. If anybody has a question, go ahead and put it, like, I don't know, just comment in the chat and we can unmute you and let you have a question. I can't see everybody, so I can't tell if you're raising your hand or not, or. All right,
Yeah,
I see one.
I think Willis has a question.
When you wrote to the radio for this code plug, Did you? I didn't see. I was distracted with other things. Did you click the digital contact list or just the other data?
I just clicked the other data.
Oh.
I'm going to actually do a digital contact list as part of this session, but I wanted to take a break right now, and this is more of the basic information. So what I did was I clicked on right to the radio. I did not click digital contact. I just put the other data in, which is all the rest of the code plug, and wrote it to the radio.
Okay. All right. I'm right there with you.
All
Sure.
right, thank you.
Anybody else have questions for the basic stuff?
Skip put one in the chat, Dwayne. He said, what is the significance of group call lists?
Okay, good question. Thank you for asking. All right, so group call is a call. It's actually, let's open up the group call one. That's the bogus one that I found out I need. Group call is open talk group, meaning that anyone that has that talk group loaded and is connected to the digital network, either via hotspot or through a DMR repeater, has the ability to talk on that channel and listen on that talk group channel. Okay, so that is kind of like a wide area network, so to speak. And this is how you would actually be talking on a repeater or on a SkyBridge unit or a Pi-Star unit, and it would be a group call. And that way, more than one person can listen, more than one person can talk. When you have a private call, typically a private call, with the exception of the parrot echo test, a private call would be by person and by their actual DMR ID. And at that point, if you have your friend's DMR ID set up as a channel and he has your DMR ID set up as a talk group, you guys can talk privately with each other over the network.
Okay.
Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, he Skip commented again. He said he meant to ask about the significance of receive group lists.
Okay, well, we haven't actually gotten to that, but I mean, I can take a look at it. Receive group call list is not something that you need to use to talk on the radio or actually set the radio up. It's a little bit of an extra. Sorry about that, guys. It's a little bit of an extra thing. So move this out of the way. Here we go. So come down here. Yeah, I would leave this blank. I typically don't use this. It's kind of like having private contacts for your friends. It's similar to that. And when you put them in the receive call list, you can take a look at them through the list menu on the front of the radio. So most of the time, if you're on a hotspot, you're going to be able to hear the group as long as you tune to it. And with the AnyTone, they have a digital monitor mode, which means that it'll monitor everything that's in your zone that comes live across your hotspot. So I'm actually really not comfortable covering this at this time. So what I can do is put it in for a further on video when we start looking at some of the advanced features. Any other questions? People, hopefully everyone's followed me then if we have no more questions.
Yeah, I don't think we have any more. So yeah, you can keep
Okay.
going, Dwayne.
Okay, all right. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually download digital contacts into the radio. Now this is something, the digital contact list is a database that you download from the DMR network, radioid.net. And the website is right here. I'm going to actually go out to the Radio ID.net site. We're going to download it. And we're going to import it into the code plug on the video here on the live stream. But this is where you would go, www.radioid.net. So let's go ahead and do that. Oh, connection is a little faster. That's helpful. Okay, so this is your radioid.net website. You may remember this if you're a new user, but you've already got your DMR ID. You would have already registered here and sent in your ham license and gotten your DMR ID. I know that Ron at BridgeCom just did a live stream yesterday on registering and getting your DMR ID. So my purpose is to go and find the digital contact list. So we're going to be looking at the database menu here. Now you can go into the menu to data dumps. That's where we want to go. That's where they dump the file every day of all the DMR IDs through the world, actually. Or you can sneak over here and it's hidden here as a database dump file section. Either way will get you there. Let's use the menu. Now, this is the dumps. Not very self-explanatory, but the database that you want is user.csv. And now that was downloaded this morning about 5 a.m. I think they do an auto download every day. So this user CSV file will have all the digital contacts for all the DMR users from this morning at 5 a.m. If there's any new people that come in after that, you'd have to download this again tomorrow. It's not that you download it every day. When you start having too many DMR IDs and not enough call signs coming into your radio, you're going to want to think about downloading this. But let's right click on this. I'm going to save this link. And I'm going to put this in my downloads, which is where I put everything else. I'm going to change the name. As you can see, it's remembered that I've downloaded this before. And this particular database is almost 10 megabytes. Again, this is always the database that you're going to want to download. You right click, you do a save link as, you tell it where it wants to go. Got about 8 seconds left. Well, I'm wishing I had Xfinity right now. All right, so it's downloaded into my downloads folder. I'm going to open up the downloads folder again. There it is, user CSV. So now we're going to go back to the programming software. Going to go to digital contacts. Going to look at the first 20,000. It's empty. Okay, so the AnyTone radio knows that this database is going to be pretty big. I think we're running around 170,000 people in the database right now. And this is the only place in the CPS that you're actually going to see the information when we download it. When it goes into the radio, it goes into memory. And the only thing that you'll see when you get a call is the AnyTone will translate the DMR ID that's being received into the radio over the network into call sign, name, and location. And that's the purpose of this database. So how do we get it in there? We go up to tools. We do an import. This is a bunch of stuff that AnyTone put in there because different versions of the CPS can cause issues. I just basically ignore it. We're now in the import file list. On the left-hand side, these are all the different databases or information that's in the radio that you can import or export. So I'm going to go down to digital contact list, click on it. It's going to ask me, what do I want to download from? I'm going to go to my downloads, select the user CSV that we just downloaded from radioid.net, double click on it. There it is. Then I'm going to do the import. This is going to take a couple of minutes because there's a lot of data that comes through here. This is one of the reasons why when I first started the demo, I didn't write digital contacts. For one thing, there's no digital contacts in the basic code plug that you read from the radio unless you've got a pre-programmed radio from us. And the other is that it takes a long time to download to the radio. So we're now going to display what's happening here. All right, So this is the first 20,000 names in the database. And let's look at the last 160 to 180,000 names. All right, so I'm not going to go continue on. Suffice to say that there's a lot of data in here. So to recoup, we went to Radio ID.net. We found the database dump files. We did a right click on the user CSV. We saved it. We went into the radio CPS import menu, ignored this nonsense, went to the digital contact list, grabbed the US user CSV file. I'm going to double click on it. You could have said okay, and then we did the import. There's no sense in doing it again, so we're just going to close this. I just wanted to do this as a review. So now the next thing we'll do, I'm going to go over to my set com menu and make sure my radio is still connected, which it is, on COM3. We're going to go ahead and write to the radio again. And this time I am going to click digital contact list. And we're going to write the digital contact list plus the other information that's in there. So this would be a good time while we're waiting for this. If there's any questions right now, we're going to have to be waiting for a few minutes here for this to download. So anyone has a question, now's a really good time to come on in.
Yeah, Dwayne, Chuck asked one in the chat. He said, what is the difference between user.csv and userna.csv?
User NA would be North America, Chuck. Radio ID.net, some radios don't have the capacity right now to put 170, 180,000 IDs in. The AnyTone radio will take 200,000 with the memory that's in the 878. The 578 mobile will take 300,000. A lot of people don't really do international. So by doing North America, it's an easy way to get the database smaller. And also you get United States and Canada. And actually on the USA 3100 talk group, that's pretty much what you're going to have on that talk group is USA and Canada. There's some guys from the UK that around 5, 6 in the afternoon on the East Coast, they pop in say hi to folks. And you know, all through the day you could get someone from anywhere to come in, but the only purpose of that is to make this database smaller, is to go with the NA.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Another question is, I see convert JSON to CSV. Is that something we need to worry about, or is that an old, we need to do that?
Yeah, that's something that it's kind of a past tense thing. Radio ID.net went through a little bit of conversion. I don't know if you remember, it used to be called DMR Mark, and it used to have servers in the US. And then when the European Union went to some special type of privacy rules, the DMR Mark guys and the Brandmeister guys moved all of their servers over to the EU. And so you'll see that this is an old database. These databases that we're seeing on the screen is an old database, but you'll see sometimes they won't have a city, they may not have a last name for guys, and that's all because of the rules over in European Union. So that's when Radio ID.net, a bunch of volunteers in the US, worked with the DMR Mark and the Brandmeister guys, and they took over controlling the DMR IDs and having these lists available. So at one time, they eliminated the user.csv. There's a quick story behind it. We have time. We're only at 52% of the database. So one of the administrators of Radio ID.net is not a big fan of CSV files. He really doesn't like them at all. So he took it off. They took it upon themselves to eliminate the user CSV, and they provided only the JSON version. So AnyTone came up with a conversion program. I didn't cover this, but I'm going to show it to you right now. Here is the JSON to CSV conversion program right here. Okay, and we'd have to extract this to see what it is. But this was the only way to get a database to CSV format for about 4 or 5 months. And then Radio ID.net realized that it was a struggle for a lot of people to have to do the conversion, and they went ahead and went back to saving everything in CSV file.
If somebody asks for a signal,
Excuse me.
immediately shove them for asking for a signal.
Thank you.
Wait.
It looks like Vern's got one. Got his hand raised.
Sure. I'm having trouble with the audio on my side, Justin. So if you could help me out with that, I'd appreciate it.
Okay. Joe, can you mute Vern? There we go. Vern, you are unmuted if you want to ask your question.
Okay, this is Vern, KD8KQS. I have
Hi,
a
Vern.
question about DV Mega. You're talking about SkyBridge. Can this also work on DV Mega?
Yeah, it's exactly the same.
Okay, that's what
SkyBridge is a typical top hat board. Also, DV Mega is a top hat board. They all run the same software inside, which is from the UK called PyStar. So everything I did on the channel that I called SkyBridge, you could call DV Mega and it would be the exact same.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure, no problem. Yep.
Is this the same as OpenSpot type format?
OpenSpot, yes, I would say yes. The only, there'd be no difference in writing the code plug for an OpenSpot than what I did for the SkyBridge. You'd be putting your frequencies in. I think OpenSpot may use time slot 1, but I'm pretty sure they default to color code 1. And that's the only thing that you'd have to worry about. It would be the same thing. It's a simplex hotspot. And so you just use the same frequencies, transmit and receive. Yeah, I have a couple of open spots. I'm actually running a SkyBridge right now because obviously that's part of our tech support program for me to help out with the SkyBridge guys. So we've done this completed this radio download, and now I'm going to actually get out of this and go back to the channel menu. So right now we've successfully downloaded all the digital IDs that need to be put in the radio so that you can convert what comes in off the network as a DMR ID to actually something very usable for hams, which is the call sign, username, and location. And that's done automatically in the AnyTone radio.
When identifying, especially in international talk groups.
All right, so if there's no further questions right now, I'm actually going to go over and show you guys how to set up your display as a final learning task. All right, let's go over there. So display settings on the radio, we're going to open up optional settings. And the optional settings menu has a number of tabs on it. And you have a lot of flexibility in this radio to set up how you want it to perform, how you want it to look on your display. So I'm going to start out with the basic digital functions, which they call digital func menu here. I'll click on that. Now, call hold time. The default is 5 seconds for group hold times, and the default from AnyTone on manual dial, which is private call hold time, is 1 second. I prefer a little bit longer hold time. I prefer 10 seconds on group, and I like 5 seconds on my privates. Okay. And this is my personal preference. It has to do with whether or not the radio will connect and recognize a repeater. So if you shorten this time up and there's a glitch on the connection of the repeater and the radio is not recognized, but it doesn't recognize that it made a connection to the repeater, it'll drop the call. So that's why I use 10 seconds. The radio is timing in milliseconds, but there's a lot going on over the DMR network. So there could be other people keying up. There's just a lot of, it's almost like the packet system where packets can collide. So I like to leave 10 seconds time for my hold time. These two, pre-wave time and workhead periods, are very important. 100 milliseconds is where you want to be. AnyTone actually started putting the recommended setting in there. Okay. Filter own ID and missed call. The reason that that's nice to have is if you do any kind of private calls or you do any texting, every time you get a private call, it's going to pop up your ID. Okay, so we filter it out. You don't need to see your ID popping up. And so we turn that on to filter out your ID so that when you get a missed call, it's not going to, if you did this without this on, you'd be getting missed calls constantly because it's not going to accept your ID into the radio. So that's basically why we turn that on. Remote stun and kill, we're just going to stay away from. Digital monitor. I'm going to go over this pretty quickly because it's more of an advanced feature. But digital monitor will allow you to monitor all of the talk groups that are loaded into a particular zone in your radio. So if you have 12 channels or 12 talk groups in your zone, with digital monitor on, you're going to hear everything. Now, it's got a single slot and a double slot mode. In single slot mode, it's going to hear everything that your channel is set for time slot wise. So in my particular case, it would be time slot 2. Now with a hotspot, this is not so important because the hotspot takes both TS1, TS2, time slot 1, and time slot 2 at the same time. It interprets it. But in a repeater, sometimes they'll have one time slot for local calls and then another time slot for internet or broadcasting calls. And so if you turn this to double slot, you digital monitor both time slots plus every channel that's in your zone. So if we had, if you have a channel that you want to monitor, it's not in your zone, you just have to put it in there. You can have multiple zones and multiple channels, and you can have as many zones as you want. You can put the same channels in it. You can put different channels in it. So if it's something that you really want to monitor, you just have to make sure you have that talk group in the zone as a channel. So not sure what that is. I'm going to actually, I prefer not to use digital monitor, and it's a personal preference, really. And then you have some other settings on digital monitor. You can use any color code, any ID. These are really a lot more advanced features than starting out and beginning. You really don't have to worry about any of that. Now, this SMS format, it should always be M for Motorola. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm not going to ask questions at every tab. Stop for questions. I'm going to try to go through this a little faster. I'm going to move over to the other tab. This is really easy. If you click on one of these fields down here, you'll get a quick help screen on what's happening. So in this particular one, address book is set with its own code. When this function is on, the radio will make any analog call will send the analog ID together with the selected ID in the address book. I never use that, but that's what it does. Okay. The main thing I wanted to show this channel for, this particular tab for, is to make sure that you've got at least a 1 setting in both your VFOA and VFOB squelch settings. That's really important. And you want to have at least 2 seconds of analog call hold time. And that pretty much is it for this. So now we'll actually go into the display mode here. And if you have questions, just write down, other tab, what your question is, and we'll get to them. I'm definitely going to be able to answer questions here. So on the display side, we're going to start out with brightness. That's a personal preference. Okay, auto backlight duration. It's set pretty short, so your backlight's going to go off a lot. I kind of like mine to be at 30 seconds. To be quite honest with you, if I'm testing the radios, I'll have it on all the time. I won't even shut the backlight off. I can go a couple days with a battery without having it on. Backlight delay, we leave that off. Menu exit time. This is the time that the menu will allow you to have the menu open before it times out and closes itself. This is a little short. Again, I use 45 seconds on mine. It's a personal choice. All right. Time display is on. I'm not going to go over these settings anymore. These are the key ones that I wanted to show you, other than some color changes. So a call sign display color defaults, everything defaults, it seems, to orange or white. I like my call sign to show up on my screen as red. It's a personal setting. I like my A channels to come up in yellow, and I like my B channel to come up in green, and I like my zones to be white. And I set it this way because when I'm starting to help a new user, after I'm finished doing these settings, when that display comes up on his radio, I can talk to him and say, okay, make sure that you're in VFOA. That's going to be the yellow channel name. Let's switch to VFOB. That's going to be the green channel name. So it's just a convenience for me that I'm on the same wavelength when I'm teaching folks. All right. So then I'm only going to do two other tabs on here. And one is going to be power on and the other is work mode. So let's look at work mode first. This is the display mode in the radio. And this can be very, very confusing if you're writing memory channels. If you leave this display mode set to frequency, the channel name is not going to show. Just the frequency is going to show. I don't know anybody that does manual memory channels that really wants to see the frequency. You want to see the channel name that you gave it. So we change this to channel. And then you can also tell the zone or the VFOA or VFOB what the startup zone should be. Now, also down here, manual or main channel set, you can tell the radio when it turns on, which is going to be set as the main channel or the active channel. Typically, you would leave it as set for A. Now, sub-channel mode on and off. This is a way to turn off the bottom display or the channel B display, or you could even actually turn off the A display by switching. So this sub-channel allows you to have the VFOA display and also the VFOB display on the radio. So you'll have dual displays on the radio. I leave it on. What I do is I swing over to key functions, and I like setting the P1 short key to change between the main channel and the sub channel, VFOA, VFOB. And then for new users, I set the P2 key to turn the sub channel on and off. And that's the two changes that I make when I'm teaching someone new, because this way here with the P1 key on the front of the radio, that's right underneath the green menu key, you can switch between the upper and the lower display, upper being the VFOA, bottom being VFOB. And that way you can have two channels in the display and you can actively talk on the top one. You can hit the P1 key. Let's say you're talking on 3100 and maybe you want to go and test Parrot. You can have Parrot set as your second sub channel. You can switch down to Parrot, do a quick check. And then with the P2 key set to turn sub channel on and off, folks that don't like the sub channel can turn it off and have a single display. A lot of new users will use a single display so they don't confuse themselves. Okay, last thing is going to be the power on. This is where you would be able to put your call sign and your name or anything else you want in here. You would actually say custom character, and then these characters can be changed. I'm not going to go through changing them. You also can do a custom picture. It's pretty much an advanced, I would call that an advanced mode. I'm not going to cover that right now, but you can go into another menu and set the custom picture so that when you write to the radio, it writes a custom picture to the radio. So typically custom character is what the setting is, and typically people will put their call sign and their name in here. And when you boot the radio up, your call sign and your name is going to come up on the boot up screen, and that's what's going to happen. This is the power on password. If you wanted to lock your radio with a specific password that you set, you could turn this on, and every time you use the keypad or turn the channel knob, it's going to ask you for your password. Typically, I leave that off on mine. Very important is the default startup channels. These are you set this to on. Typically, it's defaulted to off. You set this to on. You can choose what zone that you want in zone A and what startup channel you want in zone A. So in this particular case, I only have Sky Parrot. So on my upper channel, I'll set it to Sky Parrot, and on my bottom one, I'll leave it on VFO. Now, something that's really important here, GPS test, I would leave that off. All that does is cloud things when you boot. It goes into GPS test mode. It's not really something you need. So definitely, as a new user, leave that off. Now, startup reset. If they even put it in here as a note, make sure it's set to on. If it's not set to on when you write the code plug, if you ever have to do a firmware update and do this radio reinitialization with MCU reboot, they call it, it has to be on or the radio won't allow you to do the reboot. So that's pretty important. I pretty much, that's what I'm going to cover today. So I'm going to go ahead and open up for any questions.
I have one question, if I may. I'm kind of curious. I see you're using a Bluetooth headset, Dwayne. What kind of
Yes.
Bluetooth headset would I want to use with these radios?
Well, you want to stay away from headsets or Bluetooth units that are high-end stereo units like the Apple AirPods or the Beats system. Basically, those are allow multiple connections, and they have proprietary firmware, so it causes issues when you're trying to Bluetooth connect. Some of the cheaper earpiece type Bluetooths work fine. AnyTone has one that's pretty reasonable. It's just a clip on the ear. I've used Logitech headsets with really good luck. They're not too expensive. They have a really good sound. I get good audio out of them. And then the one I'm using today for this call is a Parrot, Blue Parrot. They're a little bit more expensive, but depending upon how much comfort level you need, I like a single earpiece. The Logitech will be a 2 headset, but typically if you're sticking with a standard one connect Bluetooth headset, you should be pretty safe.
Do they work pretty good with the Bluetooth setup in your vehicle?
The Blue Parrot.
Yeah, I love it. There's a little bit of, yeah, pardon me?
I said the Blue Parrot works great.
I'm sorry. Oh yeah, absolutely.
A lot of places have a law, Bluetooth, you can't be on your phone unless you're using Bluetooth. And I imagine radio probably applies too if you're driving and you're on your radio.
All right, Joe, Willis, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I did.
Alrighty.
Would you be able to real quick go back over just run me through the settings on the other tab again in this menu?
Sure. I want to finish I got cut off, so I want to finish. I'll get to that real quick, but let me finish the Bluetooth question. Typically, when I'm in my car, I have a Toyota Prius. It's a 2019. I connect to the audio in the car. The one secret that on a setting is on Bluetooth hold, on the Bluetooth settings, you want to make sure you have about 30 seconds. One of the biggest mistakes folks use in setting up Bluetooth is they don't put that Bluetooth hold up above 15 seconds. And what happens is it'll keep disconnecting on you. So you want to have a pretty solid timeout. And what that does is when people are talking, after there's a receiving, it'll stay on the headset or it'll stay on the car audio for 30 seconds. So it gives you time for someone else to come back and talk, or for you to transmit and wait for somebody to receive. So that Bluetooth hold time, I use 30 seconds. All right, let's go over to the other tab.
Hey, real quick, one last thing. I assume you also use a push to talk?
I use the push to talk, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so Joe, any specific thing on this menu you want me to go over?
I'm sorry, I think that was me, Willis.
Oh, Willis, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. I was working with a student while you were going through this menu. Could you just real quick, what settings you use for this one?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, everything on the default setting should be good. What I would say that's really important is to make sure you have at least one squelch level. A lot of times I've seen in the past where AnyTone would default to 0, which means when you go to do an analog channel, it's wide open. Okay, so a minimum of 1. I've never had to change from 1 personally. It seems to be a good setting. There are folks that like to go 2. Maybe they have like a repeater that's breaks the squelch randomly. You know, they're really not in contact with it, so they'll pop up their squelch level to 2, so that repeater can't break the squelch. But typically using 1, and other than that, it's analog call hold time. Make sure it's at least 2 seconds.
Okay. Yeah, those are all the default settings.
That would be the 2 things that yeah, they are the defaults, but you know, a lot of times if you're going to download a code plug from, even if you download a code plug from our website, those code plugs are all written by third-party users. They're really not supported by us because we have no idea what settings these folks are using. So going over the display a little bit will help you if you downloaded a code plug and you want to kind of customize. This is the optional settings is where that customization comes in. So if someone wrote a code plug and wasn't consistent in the way they set it up, it could cause problems for you. I mean, this one here, I've had folks that are new users that say, wow, every time I turn the radio on, all I get is a scratching sound. And you know, all they have to do is put the squelch back to 1 from 0, and you're back into a normal radio mode.
Jim asked a question in the chat, Dwayne. He said, is there any documentation that explains all of the different settings in the menu or options settings?
That programming guide, yeah. Go ahead.
That's on our support page.
Yes, and it's also in the download that we did. Grab my download folder here. So this is the download that we did earlier. I don't know if you were here for that, but this is the extracted folders that come with the firmware. AnyTone is very, very dedicated to keeping this format for the 878 and the 578. They deviate a little bit on the 868. I'm not so sure why, maybe because they just haven't really been working on the 868 as heavily. But under this programming guide folder, there's a programming guide. There's a VFO at the top, that's for programming manually. And the rest of these are the programming guide in different languages. So this programming guide in English has an index in it. And you can see that you can go back in if you wanted to talk about doing a scan list, doing a radio ID list. You can actually go to the index and find what page it is. I don't guarantee that these page numbers are exact. This document is done by a third party, Trygve Svard, one of our dealers out in Minneapolis. And he may not keep it up. He has not kept it up to date, but it's got so much good information. It's still really valuable. And so that's where I would recommend you go first.
All right. Does anybody else have any other questions?
Hey, I noticed on the Facebook groups that seems to be a lot of issues with the 1.2 or the 1.21 software. I know I upgraded mine from 1.19, and Dwayne knows I got in touch with him to 1.20, and I got a box showing up on my display for encryption, but no encryption was turned on. I couldn't figure out how to turn it off.
Yeah.
Dwayne knows I went back to the 1.19 and it went away. So I haven't upgraded anything. So I just wondered if I go to the 1.21, will that tag go away, or is there still a lot of issues?
You know, Don, I've been running 1.21. I don't have the problem, but as you know, a lot of people don't have the problem. There is a workaround. I'll get with you privately. I'll send you something through Facebook Messenger on what to do to get rid of that, and it should get rid of it. I probably haven't talked to you. I did run that by AnyTone, and we figured out a way to, it's something to do with the settings in the code plug. And it's something that you actually have to turn on and not turn off. And I'll show you that. I'll give you that information privately if that's okay.
Yeah, no problem. Like I said, I just went back to the 1.19, and I have a buddy of mine that told me if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I know guys that are still running. I know guys that are still running 1.12 in their radios. They never upgraded them.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, if you know, unless you're having a problem or you need some a feature that they've added, from about 1.15 forward, when they did the baseband update, most of the firmwares are fairly stable. You know, there's things that happen with these radios, and it can't be explained. And you know, I mean, I've tested people's code plugs that have problems. I put them in my radio and it doesn't do it, you know, and I kind of have invented a little term. I call them the DMR mysteries, because you just don't know why it's doing it. And eventually, you know, maybe weeks later, somebody will come up with the idea and they'll post it, and son of a gun, that's what works, you know. So we definitely stay close to the forum and the Facebook pages as new users. Like Don said, that's, and I haven't had any problems with 121 at all. So,
Well, you know what
you
a
know,
guy told me. You know what a guy told me that DMR stands for, don't you?
go ahead.
Dang mystical radios.
It's kind of true. So
All right.
I know we wanted to keep this kind of short. I think we're extended our time, Justin. So
Yeah.
I have a question. I just want to ask in general to the guys that are listening, was my pace okay? Is there anything I could do better for you guys?
Look good to me.
I think Willis might have had one more question before we go.
Okay, that's great.
We'll let him ask that one more question, and then we'll probably wrap up here.
Sort of two questions in one. Everything we've done in this, what is it, the optional settings, we're going to hit OK, and then we're going to have to rewrite to the radio, correct?
Yes, sir. Every
Okay.
time you make a change, whether it's a channel change, a talk group change, a setting of the optional settings, you're going to want to save those changes as a code plug.
Okay.
Typically what I do is I start off with my basic code plug and I date it and I save one.
Okay.
And then I make changes to the next, I date it to the next day or whatever. And I always save one that I know I can go back to if I screw it up.
Okay. The other question, and this may be a question for another meeting. I think in my area, there aren't many digital repeaters. Am I going to have to do something different to communicate with analog repeaters?
No, you just set up an analog channel.
Okay.
I mean, let me take a look at this for you.
I don't want to take a whole lot of time with that. I was just curious.
I'll just do it really quick for you here. You just do an analog, you select an analog channel.
Okay.
Okay. Now you put your frequencies in, you put your channel name in, all your DMR stuff doesn't count anymore. Okay. The only thing that's tricky is if it has a PL tone.
Right.
You got to turn the PL tone on. And with
Gotcha.
AnyTone, you got to turn them both on.
Gotcha.
And then you got to change the carrier from plain carrier to CTCSS.
Oh, okay.
And that's a tricky thing that a lot of people don't do. And it's not well documented.
Down.
But and for some reason the AnyTone engineers haven't figured out that you can use just one of these as decode or encode. And so like I'll see which one I shut off here. And see, if you shut off the decode, you can't set the carrier to CTCSS. Okay. So yeah, same thing. You can shut off the encode. Okay. But typically encode is what we need the most typically so anyway, so that's just a little tip there.
Can I set up an analog channel? Like, okay, so you had us set up the digital one. you know, with the frequency 438.8, can I just go down to line 2 and
Yes.
set up an analog channel and,
Yes.
you know, and then again, just write it to my radio and.
Right. So what you want to make sure you do on an analog channel is you don't want to use any frequency correction.
Right.
You put the
okay,
receive frequency in properly, and you put the transmit frequency in with the correct offset.
Okay.
And that's, you know, this sometimes this throws people, but if you look at it, it's only in hertz. It's really, really small adjustments. And it's
Right.
only made,
Hey,
yeah,
Dwayne,
Don.
don't forget he has to change the bandwidth too.
Oh, yes, thank you, Don. I'm so sorry. That's great. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. I sometimes forget that what I do automatically. So for analog FM, we use 25 kilohertz for bandwidth.
Right. Yeah.
Thanks, Don.
Yeah, on this, on the CTCSS, you got it at 62.5. I noticed there's several different scales. What difference does it make?
Okay, so there's two tone systems in the US, CTCSS and DCS. So if you click on CTCSS, there's a range of tones. Everybody has to use one of the tones that is in this range for CTCSS. Older repeaters may use a DCS system, which is a completely different system. You can see it's got a D in front of it. It's a different tone set. So most popular that I know of, I have never personally had to use a DCS tone. But I hope I answered your question, Chuck.
Does it matter if it's 62.5 or just as long as it's
Yeah,
correct?
absolutely. The repeater owner will tell you what it is. The repeater owner, the
So it's
repeater,
specified. Yeah, all right,
Right.
thanks.
yeah, the
Very good. I
specifications in the
appreciate
repeater will tell you that. Yep.
Yeah, you did an amazing job.
Oh, thanks.
All right, guys. We're went a little over than we wanted to, but this has been really good. First off, I want to thank you all for joining us on this call. This is the first time. This is a little thing we're calling BridgeCom University Classroom. This was the first run at it. I think it went really well, and thank you all again for joining. We hope it's been useful for you, that you know you've learned something more about your radio. And if you have any more questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can find us on our support page and submit a ticket. And if you do submit a ticket, it's likely we'll be talking to Dwayne again. And then our Facebook group is a really good resource too. If you're not on there, you can just search. I think it's called BridgeCom Systems Official Group. There's like 6,000 people in that group. And if you post a question, somebody's going to pop on there and answer it, usually within the same day. So yeah, we thank you guys for joining us on this. We hope you enjoy the rest of your day and have a good weekend. And yeah, again, if you have more questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you guys.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Good seeing you, Don.